So post-traumatic stress is an injury to the mind. Very real, very debilitating for many veterans who have it. That's the post-traumatic stress. Traumatic brain injury is a physical injury to the brain. They're both in the head, but they're two very different injuries, and they need to be treated differently.
Hello, everyone. Patrick and I are really excited to come to you today with a new series that will be rolling out in our podcast. So if you've been with us this far, by the time you listen to this, we will have released just about 30 episodes between the Book of Law, Season 1, and Leadership and Motivation Unleashed, Season 2. We've covered topics across the spectrum, everything that connects to workplace, ethics, politics, interaction, what helps people succeed, what causes people to fail. We've tackled some really timely topics like AI, remote work, and then some really old school topics like how to handle bad behavior, right? How to plan a career path that will get you where we want to go. You've heard our hot takes on all of these. In many cases, Patrick and I agree with each other. In some cases, we disagree with each other. And we've also had such different experiences that we may have been in similar situations, but came out of it with very different takes or different perspectives because of our personalities, because of the roles that we held, and also the types of environments and the types of perspectives that we came to those with. And we hope you've enjoyed it. What we're going to do next is something a little interesting. Over the course of some of these same episodes, we have mentioned names of people that we admire, people that we've worked with over the years that have taught us lessons, that have dropped quotes, that have handled situations in really unique ways. And what we are going to do over the next series is introduce you to some of our favorite people. Patrick and I have reached out to some of the folks in our network who we feel have particularly unique experiences, perspectives, and stories that we'd like for them to share with you. And they've graciously agreed to come on our podcast and have conversations with us. And some of them will share different takes that they have on topics we've already covered. And others might share just different unique perspectives that we wouldn't be able to offer because we haven't had those experiences. And so over the next, probably couple of months, we are going to introduce you to some of our favorite people. We're really curious to hear from you if you like this format, if you'd like to have more conversations with others, or if you have any questions for our guests. I'm sure they'll be really excited to hear your feedback as well.
I love diversity of thought, and the list of people are diverse as it comes with regards to their experiences and the way they think and the greatness they've delivered into the environments they've populated. So I think everyone's going to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. It is August 7th, and we're proud to have Donna Cranston, the founder and chief executive officer of Defenders of Freedom, with us. I don't think we did it on purpose, but it's also Purple Heart Day. Super interesting that Donna is with us today to talk about her leadership journey, how she motivates the people around her to continue to make Defenders of Freedom awesome. I'll do a brief intro of Donna, and then I'm going to hand it to Donna because I've never do her story justice. So I met Donna, I think it was 2008, Donna. I was at U.S. Bank, and an employee of mine named Susan Cody was volunteering at the Dallas VA hospital, and there was a flyer in the hallways for a golf tournament. And I think it was a Cowboys club, and that's when Jerry Jones owned it. And I think at the time, Jerry was giving you the course as part of his donation towards wounded and injured veterans, which you'll get into here in a minute. So I went to the tournament with a good friend of mine named Mark Holland. He flew in from, at the time, he was living in Palm Desert, California. We met some amazing wounded vets that Donna has taken care of over the years, and I just fell in love with it. And a year or two before that, I had gotten involved in U.S. Bank's veterans program, Proud to Serve. So I got the bank behind Donna, and the rest, as we say, is a little bit of history, and we'll get into that as we go. But this is really about Donna's leadership journey and founding this amazing organization. Donna is the type of person that will always put others before herself. And I served on her board for 10-ish years or so in various capacities, and I tried to help her with some of that work-life balance stuff that we talk about in the corporate world, but she never listened to me on that front. And for a good reason, because she would literally drive across the country without sleeping, swim across the Atlantic and into the UK to help a wounded veteran. That is who she is as a person. She has helped thousands of people. And it isn't just the veteran themselves, it's their families. The work that she does with traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress. She'll get into it here in a minute about what she did in the beginning of the organization with care packages flowing into Iraq, Afghanistan, Djibouti, and all points east of us, west of us, that where we had troops deployed in harm's way. She helped people in a really big way, and she helped change my life. And she taught me some things about leadership that I wouldn't have gotten in corporate America. And I know you don't have a lot of time, but if you've listened to our pod, we try to talk about law enforcement and military and not-for-profit and corporate, not just corporate. That's what Rachel and I know the best. But we try to incorporate all of it because leadership transcends all types of organizations, profit and not-for-profit. And if you don't have the right leadership in place and you're not treating people the right way or being treated the right way, as best you can in the moment, everyone has their days, etc., and then things don't work. And you just celebrated your 20th anniversary of your organization. That is huge. Not many any type of orgs make it that far. And it's because of your leadership and the motivation you supply to the people around you. So the title of our podcast is Leadership and Motivation. And one of the best people I know at both is here today with us, Donna Cranston. Donna, I never do it justice. Just spend a couple minutes talking about the journey of your journey and then Defenders of Freedom, what put you in it, to execute with it, and some of the work that you've done. Then we'll get into some questions we have about how you've done it.
Okay. Well, my son was deployed to Iraq in 2004, and I had heard that the DFW airport was going to be a hub to receive the troops. If you remember back in 2003, the DOD was bringing them into the East Coast, and then they were stranded. They had their 2 weeks of R&R, but then they didn't have a way to get home. And so people were donating miles, and there was a huge uproar in the nation that it was wrong that these troops were being stranded. And so they got together and decided that Atlanta would be a hub and DFW would be a hub to receive these troops. I lived 10 minutes from the DFW airport, and I tried to get information. We had just moved back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so I didn't really know anybody. But I made some phone calls, and everybody kept saying, yes, we know it's going to come. And I never even thought about calling the Chamber of Commerce. So anyway, I was on the treadmill one morning and on June 16th, 2004, and I was watching the local morning show, and all of a sudden, there they are at the DFW airport showing these troops coming in. And I'm like, how did I miss this? And they had a number at the bottom, so I jumped off the treadmill and I called the number, and it was the Colleyville Chamber of Commerce. And I told them, hey, I saw your story this morning about the troops. My son is in Iraq. I would love to be able to come out there and greet the troops. So they gave me the information and said, we welcome you. Everyone is welcome. At that time, they had Brett Stansberger, who was the president of the chamber, went in when she found out they were coming in. She also knew a guy named Dan Petty, and with the North Texas, it doesn't matter, but I'll think of it. And then the DFW airport. Rhett went to the door of Jim Kreitz and knocked on his door. He was the chief operating officer of DFW airport, and she said, if the troops are going to come in here, they have to know they're supported. We cannot let what happened in Vietnam happen again. Well, Jim was a retired Marine lieutenant colonel, and he had a nephew in Iraq at the time, and he just embraced her and said, what do you want to do? And so they came up with Dan and Rhett and Jim and the military, because it was actually a military operation. They had people that were stationed here at DFW through the Human Resources Command. So they all met, and they came up with a plan that they would put out to the community, that they wanted people to take a week, businesses, organizations, whoever, to come out, take a week, and greet the troops. It was a beautiful plan, and it worked for 7 years and 9 months. All of that time, we still had people coming out. It was beautiful. So I planned to get out there the next morning, and I was so excited. And I thought maybe I'd meet some of Matt's buddies. And anyway, so I got out there. We get in line. They had us line up on both sides of an aisle, and then the troops would come through. And and we formed a gauntlet. And he ended up being a really good friend. This little guy came scurrying out from behind the doors, and he made an announcement and told us how many people were on the plane. And then he scurried back. He just disappeared. And that was to go back and get him processed. Well, the first ones who came through, and I started shaking their hands, looking them right in their eyes and saying, thank you for serving our country. I knew my life had changed. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew I was going to be out there every day to greet these men and women. There was so much pride and respect and just love for each one of them that came through. So that began my journey. I didn't know what it looked like. I would spend 8 hours out at that airport because they would get in the morning, and then they would be home for 2 weeks, and then they would come back. So we had the troops coming in at all different times to go back to Kuwait, but every day that plane came in. So some days we might have 230 people come in on that plane, so there might be that many coming in. And so there were just troops everywhere. So I joined the USO so that I could go on the secure side also after the troops came in. And then I could talk to them and then get their addresses if they needed anything, and then would put them back on the plane in the evening, and then they would go back. So we just hung out. We helped them in so many ways. We offered them our cell phones as soon as they got off the plane. We gave them rides home. We just did all kind of stuff. Many of them wanted to surprise their families if they were local. They didn't let them know they were coming. And so we would offer them rides to their homes and listen to the moms wailing and having fun. And it was just a beautiful time. So I started saying when I was on the USO side of things, and that Welcome Home a Hero was all volunteers. The airport didn't want to hire anybody. The USO didn't want to take that on because it was on the unsecure side, but they helped in a lot of the planning. And I always give a lot of credit to DFW Airport, realizing what a special place and time it was, because they gave up so much for the troops. They gave parking vouchers for anyone that came out there. Sometimes there were 400 or 500 people out there. We would give them a voucher to get out of the airport free of charge. We didn't want there to be any hindrance for people to be able to come out and say, thank you for serving our country. We love you. They gave up space. They donated the USO space. They ended up donating the offices to the military. The whole time they were out there, they gave us a bag room, a whole nother area where the troops could store their bags because they couldn't take them through security because they didn't manifest till 3 p.m. and that was on the unsecure side. They gave us closet space. They just were wonderful to us. And all of that, I always give Jim Kreitz all the credit for that because Jim said, whatever you need. So I did, since I was there so much, I got to talk to the troops and realize that not all things are equal over there, that we had some who were on some of the big bases that they never left those bases. So the only thing they really had were wants. It wasn't really needs. Then we had people who were out in the remote mountains in Afghanistan that only got their supplies that were airlifted in, and they had needs and wants. And sometimes their needs were bigger than their wants, just basic food and stuff. So I said, you know what? Just write down what you need and I'll do my best to get it to you. And so from 2004 to 2012, we sent thousands and thousands of care packages, and they were personalized, which was so beautiful. And then the troops always seemed surprised that they were personalized. And I'm like, well, you told me what you wanted. And then one of the things that our colonel did out there, I learned from them that it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. And so I showed up at the airport one day. We found out that I got to know the routine really well, that once they landed at midnight, then their leave started. So then they would be home for 2 weeks, and then their next day was a travel day. Well, I could meet them at the airport with great big boxes of supplies. And I asked Colonel McAfee, could we put these on the plane to go back as cargo? And he said, yes, they just had to claim it in Kuwait. So the guys that benefited from that the most were the 142nd, the Go for Broke unit, who helped rescue the Texas National Guard during World War II. And they are all from Saipan, all those islands over there, Guam, a huge Guam group of them, wonderful people who love rice and Spam. So I would make 40-pound boxes of rice and Spam, bring them to the airport, let them check it as cargo, and they were happy as could be, and they'd put it on the plane and then just take it back. So it was so fun to be able to do that. And I think it was like 2008, maybe 2007, I got a request on the website from an advocate for wounded warriors, which is an AW2. The military has all their acronyms, who was at the Wounded Transition Battalion, WTB, at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And she said, I saw on your website that you were helping wounded soldiers. Can I get you to help with some financial assistance? And I was like, yeah, I'd be honored to. I never knew how I would help. I knew I wanted to, and we put that in our mission statement. Oh, I guess I should back up and just say, after sending so many care packages, I kind of got overwhelmed in the beginning. And so I started asking people if they wanted to help. And all the volunteers out there said, yes, they would. They'd either take a soldier or they were donating items. And after I got so many, I realized that most people support our troops. They just didn't know how to do it. So I started Defenders of Freedom really as an avenue to connect the community to our troops and let everyone have a piece in being able to say thank you to our troops. So when I got the call from the AW2, I was like as honored and humbled that I could get to maybe help a wounded soldier. Yes, absolutely. What do you need? And what I learned, the first guy was my first introduction into traumatic brain injury. I didn't even really know what it was, but he was still active duty, but they were sending him to the Nashville VA to get some treatment for his TBI because they didn't have anything at the base. And back then, they didn't know much about it. But on his way to the hospital, he might drive by the Walmart or something in the area and say, oh, I needed to stop in there and spend way too much time and way too much money and turn around and go home, totally forgetting that he had an appointment. Well, on his third time, they really came down on him, the Army and all of its wisdom and how to handle it. They docked his pay and demoted him. And so now he couldn't pay his bills. And so she was reaching out to me to see if I would buy him a PDA, which, if you remember, those got phased out right as smartphones were coming in. And she wanted to be able to set a timer for every 15 minutes on the days of his VA appointments so that if he got distracted, the PDA would remind him, keep going, you got your appointment. And they were like $300 and some. And I was like, wow, that's expensive, but okay, I'll help him if this is what he really needs. And then she asked if I would pay some bills for him. So that opened up a whole new world of being able to help them with their finances. Because again, if you remember back during that time in about 06, 07, the surge was happening and they were getting so many people hurt. They didn't know what to do with them. They were throwing them in the WTB and they weren't taking care of them. Then they were putting them out of the Army for all kind of reasons. And a lot of them, they were waiting 6 to 9 months for their benefits to start. So I could fill that gap a little bit by paying bills for them and at least keep them moving. And so I helped by 2000, I don't even know when, by maybe 2011 or 12, I had helped veterans in 32 different states because they could call me. I don't even know how we got word out, but it did. And there weren't that many helping with that. And I think the leadership thing here that kicks in was just really common sense, because some of the big nonprofits were saying, well, you can only help a veteran one time. Well, that's great. You help them for that month. But if they're not getting their benefits for 6 months and they can't work, or their spouse has had to take off because they're hurt so badly, there's no income, I didn't help them at all. I just prolonged them becoming homeless. So there were veterans, and Patrick remembers this, there were veterans that I helped for 6, 7, 8 months. keeping them in their homes, because the one thing I knew was that if they become homeless, it is so hard to get out of that. And it's so demoralizing for nothing they did wrong other than get injured or wounded in combat. So that set us, I don't even know how I did all that. I just responded. I took their phone calls wherever I was, scribbled notes down, and then they could send me all their bill information. I could make a phone call and it would be taken care of that day for them.
That's amazing.
So it was just responding, I think.
And you cared, and you didn't use bureaucracy as an excuse, and you saw people who needed help, and you just moved forward.
Yes, and I'll tell you one thing that I think really, I didn't know this at the time, but as I have reflected over time, as I was, and I still went to the airport every single day during all of this, that was my priority. But seeing the faces of those men and women coming through, looking in their eyes, talking to them, it really personalized our military to me, hearing their stories. So when I got phone calls, I could almost envision what these, and I'm going to say kids, look like, and the need that was there for them. And so it was just a no-brainer. And I always say, all the mistakes I made, it didn't matter because it was all coming from my heart of gratitude for what they were doing for our country.
From a leadership perspective, going through all that, your heart led famously, but there are things that happen that have nothing to do with the heart when you're running an organization, raising funds, trying to do the right thing. What were some of the things in the beginning that you had to navigate that you didn't expect that you would have to navigate?
Well, one was just learning how and what a nonprofit is supposed to be. Here we are 20 years later. I'm still not sure I truly know. I think I've told this all the time. I literally Googled how to start a nonprofit in the state of Texas. And I joke. Now I say, I Google, how do I run this nonprofit in the state of Texas? But my challenges were never having enough funds because the requests just came in. And that's still the case now with the brain treatment. But I think so many times when you have common sense and you're guided by principle, that the right things come. And Patrick, you probably could speak to my lack of leadership better than I can, because I think I frustrated you many times and just the things I didn't get or didn't know. But I kept it small for a long time. I was doing all of that by myself, pretty much. I had people that would come and help me do the care packages, and that was always fun. But the finances I just did at home. I could make a phone call. So I think there are two sides of this. Did I want to become one of those nonprofits that had all the bureaucracy that everything got hung up in and it took forever to address things? Or did I just want to answer those calls and take care of the kids? And I think we've talked about this. Having had 3 sons, it was so natural for me to just take care of the kids. Because the other thing I noticed coming through the lines of all those troops, so many of them reminded me of one of my 3 sons every single day. And so that just became a very natural thing, and it made it easy for me to talk to them as well.
Wow, I can't imagine how much strength and fortitude it took for you to just keep going. And your heart obviously carried you through, your kindness, your genuine care and compassion for these kids. So I have so much admiration for you and so much gratitude for you. And I've always thought that the best thing someone can do in the world is enable other people to do good in the world. And you did that. You were able, how you described, recognizing that so many people cared about our troops and felt like they wanted to do something, but they just didn't know how, or they didn't have that drive and that figure it out capability that you did. You helped make that happen. And so you've been a force multiplier, not only for the great work that you're doing every single day, but to help other people also do that. So what an amazing opportunity.
Thank you. And you know what? One of the things I realized by seeing those troops come through every day, I realized this very early on, which is why I started embracing so many others. It's why every day they kept coming, every single day. Sometimes I remember one time we only had 87 on the plane and we were all so disappointed. But there were days we had 236. And so, again, we're talking 7 years and 9 months. There is no way one person could take care of all of these troops. I knew that even the biggest organizations in this country couldn't do it. And I was still getting ones that were falling through the cracks. So I realized early on, we have to be collaborative because not one person is going to take care of all of them. And to try to stay in my lane and not do 10 different things, but just be the best at what I was doing. And then if I couldn't help that veteran, I just move him to somebody who could, because ultimately I don't really care about numbers. I care about the individual being taken care of. And that was something, a lot of nonprofits aren't that way. They are motivated by numbers. How many did we do? Well, everybody wants that. But ultimately, don't we want them taken care of and not out on the street with their families? So those were some things that just hit me. But again, I think being out at that airport every day personalized them. And it also showed me the magnitude of what we had going.
We pick our topics based on what we imagine is on the minds of many, but we are not mind readers. So please use our form, which we'll link for you in the show notes, to suggest additional topics we should consider, request to be a guest on our show, or give us constructive criticism, which will make our podcast more valuable for many. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Oh, yeah. And what I'm thinking about as you say this is think about what's going on in the world. There is like dumpster fires all over the world and big problems. And most people read the news, they watch TV, and they say, oh, there are big problems. I can't do anything about it. And they just move on because it's too overwhelming for them. And I think you did two things that are so important for anyone who's listening, for any crisis or any cause that you care about is, first of all, you were not overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. You just said, I'm going to eat this elephant one bite at a time. I'm going to go in every single troop that I can hug or shake hands or give a ride to is going to make a difference, even if I don't get to everything. And then the second thing that you did was you personalized it and humanized it, right? So when you meet people and you, as you said, when you look at them in the eye, it makes you realize how important it is. And it's much less, and think about for all of everyone else who just says, I'm sure somebody else will deal with it. But when you come into contact with someone, that's where you get an inspiration that's beyond anything. And so I think a lesson for all is if you're encountered with a problem and you just feel like I don't really know what I can do, find a way to get closer to it. And that might give you some insight, and it might give you a way to give back and make a difference in the way that you haven't expected. So thank you for sharing. That's a major leadership lesson. Question for you. I'm sure that running this nonprofit, you've encountered all kinds of leadership challenges. There might have been situations that you tried to fix and things just didn't go the way you expected. Or maybe there was an issue with a donor, a board member, a stakeholder. I'm curious to hear some of the maybe one or two challenges that you've experienced. And I'm also curious if those were challenges that you ever expected.
I think, Patrick, you might even be able to help on this a little bit, but I think one of them that still I struggle with is getting people on the board who I think are going to have the same passion, the same drive. Patrick was a strong leader in that, and not everybody's that way. And I think sometimes people get on for their resume or to be a part of something, but they don't really want to do the work. And asking them to go off the board can be a little bit challenging, but at some point I have to, because it's getting bigger than anything I can just do. And so it can be uncomfortable, but I think if I go to people with the right heart and attitude and keeping the mission first, and they're not helping contribute to the mission, then they're really just taking up space in there. And so they need to move on and find something else that they can do. And so that was pretty uncomfortable for me in the beginning. And it still is. I don't have a problem saying that, because one of the things I've done is be very guarded about who I have brought onto the board, because it has to be, and Patrick helped me with this too, It has to be people who understand the mission and love the mission and want to be a part of the mission rather than diluting and changing what we're doing. Our mission has stayed very focused. We've changed direction based on what the veterans needed as time has gone on. But in 20 years, we've had to do that. So that's probably the hardest for me.
I can understand that. And as someone who leads with heart, having to tell someone, hey, we don't want you here anymore feels difficult, right? But I think what it sounds like you did is you put the mission above the discomfort. And, you're making decisions that it's not just that you don't like them, that they're annoying you, but they are getting in the way of you being able to serve all these veterans that need the help. So that must have taken incredible fortitude. I know even people who lead in corporations have a hard time separating employees from their team, firing people. So I can only imagine how difficult that must have been.
There's a lot of ambulance chasers that think board seats are a step up, or a lot of people do it for ego. In Donna's case, I can speak from experience. If you're not going to get out in the community and help her mission, you definitely are just taking up air. And it's seen pretty quickly because the need is so great with what she's trying to do. And we're going to pivot to the brain treatment decisions you made, Donna, here in a minute.
Okay.
But the decision to focus on traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, and it's not an exaggeration, and it's been a minute since I looked at the stats, but I want to say, was it 600,000?
Right at 585, 5 something.
Right.
Yeah.
And to her point, she can't do that by herself. How do you get the word out? There's a marketing component to it. There's a spread the word component. And when I was in the board, and I still do it, and Donna knows that, and Rachel, you know it because you hear me talk about it, but where we work now. But everywhere I went, Defenders of Freedom was coming off my lips. If I was at U.S. Bank or if I was at Fiserv or here at Checkalt. So if you're not going to operate on that board and get out in the world. Now, look, I had a unique job. I traveled all the time. I was coast to coast all the time. My reach was pretty vast. But the board member was part of me. Like where I went as the ops chief for the bank, Defenders of Freedom was sidecarring with me. So I didn't separate really the two. And my bosses, not that they didn't care, but they didn't give me any grief about it. Now, not everyone's in that position. But yeah, if you're not contributing, whether you're a Leo or you're not for profit or you're in a corporate or you're a PE group somewhere or a VC group somewhere, if you're not contributing, then you, to Donna's point, you're just taking up air. I love the way she said that. So people should be self-aware before they raise their hand and do these things. It isn't about, particularly in not-for-profit world, it isn't about you. It's about what the not-for-profit's mission is, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be what Donna does to helping combat wounded and injured troops. It could be anything. Don't take up space, deliver. I want to talk about that pivot that you made, because I was actually there to wait, but I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
I want you to talk about your decision and your thought process to do that from leave. And I'm way high leveling it, but leaving care package work. And for transparency, my wife was on the board as well, and she was the treasurer. So she and Donna worked sometimes more than I talked to Donna, because Lisa was moving the money for Donna. Because Donna stepped out of that, and Lisa became the money mover. For almost a decade, I think she was part of it. And so there was a lot of fixing roofs, getting cars fixed, to Donna's point, keeping them in their homes, because veteran homelessness is serious. Veteran suicide is very serious. 22 vets a day are taking their lives. Exiting the military isn't easy for people, particularly when you're hurt. And then the ecosystem, and we're not going to start bashing the VA. Donna and I have had that discussion too, but the VA is weak. Maybe with Hegseth up there, it'll improve. I know he's not the VA guy, but at least having a combat veteran and an American patriot running the Department of Defense, the team that Trump's put in place in the VA, I have belief in, but they're still weak. And it doesn't matter who's in office and what secretary is what. I think the system isn't built to take care of 600,000 people with an unseen injury. Because if someone comes home missing a limb, and Donna says this all the time, like you can see that. Oh man, that's hard. But brain injuries are unseen. Like I just said, the fourth time, 600,000-ish of them. So Donna was seeing all this through her airport days, keeping people in their homes. Why can't these people stay employed? What is happening with this? It's their brain.
Yeah.
And Donna, I want you to talk a little bit about the science too at the end, because the science behind this should be shared with the audience, because it isn't just going to therapy. There's work going on to rebalance that organism. But talk about the leadership decision of leaving the financial support work and the care packages and getting into the science of treating people's brains.
Okay. Well, in 2013, I had just met this gal, and she called me one day and she said, I just got this job and I got $1 million grant and I need veterans with traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress. Do you know anybody? And I'm like, yeah, that's all I'm working with. And so I referred, and it was right here in Las Colinas, 25 minutes from my house. So I started referring my veterans to her, and she said, come over and see what we're doing. So I did, and I met one of the doctors who was a resident at the time, Dr. Godet, who is who I'm working with now. And I spent a lot of time in that clinic, and everybody that we put through that clinic, they saw differences in 2 weeks' time. Their lives were changed. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Well, then Governor Perry is the one that had given him that grant. And when he decided to run for president, some newspaper, somebody came out and did a smear campaign saying he gave that money illegally to the veterans, and the negative press literally closed the clinic overnight. And I was so angry. I remember calling that reporter going, why would you do this? This is the only thing helping these guys with traumatic brain injury. Why would you do this? Well, politics. So I kind of lost touch with Dr. Godet at that time. I didn't realize they had opened another clinic. And then I found out she was out in Colorado and they were trying to open something here. I don't know how I got word. Somebody called me. And she was going to try to help oversee what was going on here. Well, that one didn't work out. The people weren't qualified. And she's a functional neurologist. And so in talking with her and the two people that I had put in this clinic that didn't work out, I ended up sending them out to her. And one of them was in a wheelchair because he had this vertigo-like thing. He spent 56 days in the Dallas VA. I think that's right. And they couldn't figure out anything to do with him. And anyway, out 2 weeks with her, he came walking off the plane when he came back. It was just incredible. So I started sending a couple of people out there, but it was not really what we were doing. It was because it helped wounded troops, but we hadn't focused on that. I was still doing a lot of financial assistance, and this was in 2018. And by then, again, if you'll think back to where we were when we started that, and the VA was taking 6 to 9 months to pay bills, there was a huge need for financial assistance. Well, now by 2015, I was starting to see a lot of entitlement creep in, and people that didn't want to work, or they'd asked me to pay their electric bill for the 6th time in a row because they weren't budgeting right. They were working, but they just weren't budgeting. I was starting to sort through a lot of things I didn't want to be sorting through anymore. So I was pretty much fed up with that. And by the time I realized Doc G was going to be coming back to Dallas and opening a clinic here, I went to the board and said, this is foundational. We can continue to pay bills, but if they don't get their brains fixed, they're not going to ever pay their bills on time. So I want to go back, or I want to start by just getting rid of the other stuff, phasing that out, and only concentrate on brain injuries. And I am so happy we have done it. Can't wait to see what is going to continue to happen. And I'll just tell you real quickly what happens in there. So post-traumatic stress is an injury to the mind. Very real, very debilitating for many veterans who have it. That's the post-traumatic stress. Traumatic brain injury is a physical injury to the brain. They're both in the head, but they're two very different injuries, and they need to be treated differently. Post-traumatic stress is most effectively helped by passive treatments, where a brain injury, and this studies show this, a brain injury needs active therapy. So you can treat PTS as much as you want, but it will never effectively treat the brain injury. However, they share 7 symptoms. And if you treat the brain injury with the active therapies, it will, number one, treat the brain effectively, but it will also affect the post-traumatic stress symptoms, and they will lessen or go away. It's beautiful. But the VA, here's my dig, because they're in bed with Big Pharma, they don't want to effectively treat, and they have no functional neurologist within the VA or the DOD. So they lump the injury together and they just give meds and ineffective treatments. I personally believe that's why the veteran suicide rate is so high, because these veterans they've spent millions and millions of dollars on post-traumatic stress therapies, and they'll go through them, and they go through NICO and some of the premier programs in the DOD. But some of those same people have come out of those programs and saying something's still not right. And then we get them, and 10 days later, they're totally changed. And here's why. The symptoms that they have are a way to say these pathways in my brain are not functioning properly, because everything is on a circuit or a pathway. So when those pathways are sluggish or they're just not firing properly, that's when a symptom comes up. So through the diagnostics they do, the doctors can tell on day 1 within 2 millimeters where their brain injury is. So then they design their treatment just for them. So the 3 of us sitting here, we could all have brain injuries, but they're different pathways. So we might be in the clinic together going through something, but our protocols are going to be different based on whatever our brain injury is. So those active therapies go in and they focus on pushing those pathways open. And within 72 hours, the veteran's going, wow, something's starting to feel different. Am I feeling this? Am I just thinking it? Because it's subtle. And then between days 4 and 6, the brain, there's a switch and it says, wow, this is what we were supposed to be doing all along. Let's get going again. And we can physically see on their faces the switch as it happens. And there's a calmness through their muscles or something in their face, but we see it in their faces very clearly. And then the docs will stay in touch with them for 6 months. They send them home with homework protocol and then stay in touch with them for 6 months. We also do blood work on them. And we also do some NAD or supplements, whatever their blood tells us they need. Because so many of them have been in third world countries. So there's layers sometimes of injury. So it's so beautiful, because the other thing is, once it's done, unless they get another brain injury, which could be in a different part of their brain, it doesn't revert back. Once those pathways have been opened and strengthened by the homework that they do, then they can just move forward with their life. Does it mean they'll never have issues again? Absolutely not. And that's where the PTS therapy really will help with stuff they've been through. So I love it. It is life-changing. And I think the DOD should be doing this on everybody before they get out. And then the VA should be helping with it. And I actually have a bigger plan for that too, that has kind of molded in my head as I've watched this unfold. And because the DOD doesn't have any functional neurologists within them, I want their money. I want them to give us their money, and then we'll go to functional neurologists who are already in practice and say, I've got veterans in your community that I will send to you if you will do our protocol. And then most of them are probably doing it. There's a couple things that a lot of them won't do yet. They don't know they're allowed to. And then we could just send veterans to local areas or closer rather than having to bring everybody to Dallas. And that's how we get the 585 covered.
That is amazing. So it sounds
585,000.
So it sounds almost like when your computer is going haywire and then you just have to hit restart and let everything cycle through and then everything works properly. I'm oversimplifying, obviously, but...
Well, I oversimplify it too, because these docs have been through extensive training to know and understand all that. It's complicated for what they've had to learn, but putting it in practice, it's just amazing. And the veterans, I'll tell you, we have 2 responses. By about day 3, and things have started to shift, anger sets in. I've been dealing with this for 15 years, and you guys in this amount of time have changed this for me. That's the number one. And the other response we see very often immediately is a lot of tears when they realize that they haven't just been being jerks. And there really is a reason why all this is going on. It brings them to tears.
It's a fantastic journey, Donna. And the leadership part of that story you just told is adapt or die. You can't stay the same thing. You recognize a problem in your environment, the environment being the veteran community. It was massive. You didn't turn the other way. You could have just laid low and paid bills and done care packages, and you would have been getting donations, but you wouldn't have impacted as many people as you have if you hadn't have pivoted. And that took courage, because I remember the day you came to the board and I'm thinking, what? But it was a great call. And it's hundreds and hundreds of people. And the part you haven't touched on, I hit it in the beginning, but I want to make sure it's clear. You changed the families' lives too.
Absolutely.
You saved the marriages. You've reconnected children with their fathers and their mothers. This isn't just it is about the vet, but the ecosystem the vet travels in, you've impacted that too. You didn't make that courageous leadership decision to go out into the world and say, okay, now I'm going to use your money for brain health, something most people can't wrap their head around. And Rachel touched on it. Some of these problems are so big, and most people say, oh, that's too bad, and go on with their life because cognitive dissonance sets in. They're like, oh, I can't take it. I'm going to move on. That's a leadership lesson in courageousness. And we've been beaten on curiosity a lot lately. You sat in that clinic for days, weeks, years, watching these docs do this work. That took a certain level of commitment, being curiosity, to understand what was really happening, because your brain is on the line. Your face is out there asking for those funds to keep the not-for-profit going. Where was the money going to be delivered? And that's one thing about you and Defenders of Freedom that I still beat that drum on is every dollar is known where it goes. Yeah. And a majority of it goes to the vet. And like on the board, like we didn't get paid. There was all unpaid board seats. It was, we did it out of commitment to our country, the flag, and the people who chose to serve it. And that goes back to the comment about taking up a board seat. Like, you better be committed to the cause, because time is money and people's time is valuable. So the output of the brain treatments is amazing payback for people's time and their treasure. So I wanted to put that out there. And not a lot of CEOs get stuck in a rut. Yeah. And you didn't. What was that? 11 years in, you decided to pivot. I'm making up the math, and a big pivot you did. And then you funded the equipment. That was an interesting board meeting. Like, I want to use the money to fund the equipment. I'm like, I wasn't always along for the ride, Rachel, for the record, but her passion and her heart is for leadership. And that's a message for the listeners. Like, not everything's about balance sheets and spreadsheets. Yeah. Be courageous enough to do the right thing for the people that you want to help or the things that you're trying to help with. So you want to do lightning round, Rachel?
Well, I want to call out one other leadership lesson. So I, like Patrick, I spent most of my professional career in corporate. I've been involved in nonprofits at various points, volunteering, supporting, guiding. And I had one experience in my career where I actually was involved in funding nonprofits. And one thing that I saw in that one experience is that a lot of the nonprofits that are out there, yes, they care about their mission, but it's all about, as you alluded to earlier, being able to say, we did this, we accomplished that, so that they can get more money to go and fund their mission. So it's this cycle. And I saw some ugliness between nonprofits that were competing against each other for the same dollars, for the same recipients of support. And it was discouraging to me. I was young back then, so I was less jaded about how things work in the world. But what I'm hearing from you is you're willing to open source, which is a software term, but open source this treatment protocol and to make it available to all these other functional neurologists just so that other people can get help, even if you would be sharing trade secrets. And that is mind-boggling. I'm curious to hear how the physicians are reacting to that. Are the medical professionals equally as open to saying, yes, everyone needs to know our secrets if we get to change lives?
Yes, and they're not really secrets.
Right.
Because all the functional neurologists will know this. The only thing is the machine we bought, the transcranial magnetic stimulation, a lot of the functional neurologists don't know they can use that. They're not qualified to treat depression, but they don't treat depression. They upregulate the frontal lobe. But when they do that, depression scores improve double digits in 10 days, where the VA hopes to improve them 7 digits in 16 weeks. So we've got to educate the functional neurologists. You have to get a TMS machine because this is what it does, and I won't send veterans there without. The other is the blood work, because the functional neurologists are chiropractors at base. A lot of chiropractors believe that you don't need to do blood work. Once you get the body in alignment, it'll work perfectly. We don't believe that. And Dr. G, she knows that she's never going to be able to treat 585,000 because with that number, we still have veterans killing themselves every single day. And the number's probably closer to 35 than 22, but the VA is going to stay with the 22 that they've had for 10 years. So that's one of the things that weighs on me is we still have these men and women killing themselves every single day. And to me, that's the urgency of what we're doing. And that never left me. It's just because each one is a life or a family that's just devastated. Children that lose their parents that lose their children. And it does weigh on me. I do want to go back just to the one thing that you touched on that I don't know how this happened, but it did. When we were in the height of a lot of what was going on over in Iraq and Afghanistan, maybe in 08, 09, and we watched these troops coming through, you could tell the ones who had been out. Sometimes they came in, they didn't get a shower. They were filthy. They smelled. Their faces you could see the pain. And I wanted to keep them all home. I didn't want to let them. There were days I didn't want them. I wanted to do something to sabotage the plane. But I knew that was all bigger than me. And I couldn't do anything about any of that. But what I could do is I could be there and be a smiling face and shake their hand and encourage them. And that's where I really do believe we have to bring it down to, what can I do? I can't change the war plans. I was hearing about the horrible rules of engagement that were killing our troops that made no sense. But when I could be on the ground right there when they got off that plane, and when you could see there were some struggling, would pull them out of line, I'd give them a ride in my car, I'd take them to dinner, I'd do whatever to just do the one-on-one personal connection to say, we're proud of you and I care. What can I do to help you? And that's why I think leaders sometimes have to get out of the up here and just get right into the weeds of stuff.
Yeah.
Lead from the front. And you always have. And everyone should, even if it's hard. And because you face some hard things, like the story, we don't have time for it, but some of the stories that Donna shared with me over the years, these guys were relaying to her would bone crush most people. And she means it. If she could have taken the wheels off that bird so it couldn't taxi out, she probably would have.
Yes, I would have.
But back they went. So I think a thread here, leading with a courageous heart. You can't just be heart-led. You have to do some of the hard things too, like telling a board member they shouldn't stay, an employee they shouldn't stay, for the right reasons, not just because, like, I think, Rachel, you said it, not just like the way they put creamer in their coffee. If you're not adding value, you need to go. But the heart-led aspect of leadership doesn't get talked about enough. Maybe it's too mushy, maybe not. But if you listen to what Donna deals with every day as the CEO of Defenders of Freedom, she has to protect her heart, but she has to get out in the world and get that money so she can help these guys. But she always ends up back at the heart because that's what has kept her going for 20 years. So it is an interesting mix of curiosity and courageousness and boldness. It's boldness to call that reporter and say, what the hell are you thinking? Not many people would take the time to do that, but you do. You're constantly defending the people who wore the nation's cloth. And one of the reasons I love you so much, you amaze me with every engagement. So for all the listeners out there, keep your heart out front and keep yourself out front. If you don't know what's happening with the troops in front of you, whether you're corporate or fellow cops or firemen, you got to get out there and know and then be bold enough to do the right things on their behalf. That's what leadership is.
Yep. And the takeaway for me is even small things make a big difference. And so don't discount them. You never know what that one hug or handshake may have done to impact someone's life. And so it's the small things that anyone is capable of, as long as they care, as long as they put in the time and effort. If you don't have a lot of money to donate, but you have some time to share, that can be valuable too. Donna, tell everyone how they can support Defenders Freedom. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I want to help. Where should they go? What can they do? How can they find you?
We are at defendersoffreedom.us, and we're on all social media with Defenders of Freedom as well. It cost me $14,000 to put a veteran through 2 weeks of brain treatment. So as you can see, I go through a lot. We're always in need of financial help. So, or just spread the word about us. If you know a veteran that's struggling, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, they probably have an undiagnosed, untreated TBI. You always send them our way. We will take all of them.
And if there are any medical professionals listening, how can they get connected to learning more about the protocols?
If they're functional neurologists, give us a call too, and I will hook them up with Dr. Godet so that she can explain what she's doing and then see if they want to get on board or not. The other thing is they got to want to work with veterans. They are their own breed, and some don't, and that's fine. And they're appreciative. I think that's one of the things I love about them the most is they are just so appreciative to get the help and try to get back to who they were. So It is very rewarding.
We'll put the links in the show notes, and there's videos out there on the website that people can see the treatments and see the outcomes and some of the testimonials from the troops whose life had been changed because of Donna and Defenders of Freedom. Donna, thank you for joining us, and for all the listeners, check them out. They need the help. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. It only takes 1 minute, and it helps the show grow and reach more leaders like you in search of advice and motivation.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Please remember to share with your friends and family and coworkers, mentors, trusted advisors. This show is for everybody. See you next time.